Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to be talking about something very special and near and dear to my heart. Something that finally came to fruition. I wrote a book. Today I'm just going to be talking about how I wrote the book and the process of writing this book and just all that fun stuff. Without further ado, let's just get right into it. Just a quick synopsis of my book. It's called In Solitam Drive. And you would find out what the word in solitam means if you read the book. I don't want to give any spoilers, but basically it's just about this 13-year-old girl who just finished 7th grade. She has to move because her parents got divorced, and her mom and her brother all move away from her dad. A little bit after she moves to her new city, she meets a boy named Ethan and they become really good friends. And then over the summer, and as she's like starting to get to know Ethan, she starts to notice weird things going on in her neighborhood. And eventually her and Ethan end up discovering something weird going on with their neighborhood, and they just end up solving this whole mystery, and you watch as their friendship unfolds, and it's just a super cute middle grade book. So it can be found on Amazon and I will link it below. But basically I started writing this book March of 2020, and I didn't start writing this book because the pandemic happened. I had this idea. I'm so tempted to say like a spoiler, but I'm not going to. I had this idea for this story for some time, and then finally, like, it was like early March, and I ended up finally like starting to plan out the whole story. And from there, you know, the next 4 years I literally wrote this book, and here we are today. So basically there's this thing called a pantser, which basically means you start writing without a plan. And unfortunately for me, I was that person, and I learned my lesson from that, because I know that having a plan before you start to write a book, or even just like any project in general, is really important to have, so that way you know like what you're going into. And I did not fully plan everything out. It was my first book also, so I didn't exactly have the tools that, say, a seasoned author has for writing a book. So I just would like sit down and I would just start writing. I know better now than to just sit down and start writing. Like, I need to have a plan, and I did do somewhat of a plan for this book, but it wasn't like fully detailed, fully like written out like before I started writing it. Like, the moment I had this idea, I just literally started with chapter 1 and just started writing it. I shouldn't have done that. I should have just like created a plan and then written my book, but I didn't. And that's okay, because I'm a first-time author, and there are a lot of like lessons that I have learned along the way that I think have really helped me as now a baby author. That's what we're called. But I think that I had to go through that in order to now understand like the perspective that I have today, which is that I need to actually sit down for my next book and plan it out so that it's fully like written out and fully a plan before I start writing my book. Yeah, so basically I didn't have a plan. I started writing, and then over the course of 4 years, there were several people who looked at my book, and that was definitely an important part of this whole process. I got really good feedback from both friends, teachers, and professional editors. The professional editors didn't come in until 2023. Before then, I had friends look over my manuscript, and they gave me good feedback, and it was just like really beneficial for me to get the perspective of both like people who aren't professional editors and people who are professional editors, and see like their thoughts about my story. And then like eventually, once I had a professional editor, that also in itself, or actually yeah, once I had 2 professional editors, that was also very beneficial because those are people who like really know what they're talking about. Both of the professional editors that I had written books before, and so they knew what they were talking about. They would write me what's called an editorial letter, where basically they go into depth on everything about my story, what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. They made suggestions on how to make it better, on how to make it seem more like a middle grade book, which it is a middle grade book. For me, I think like the challenge was just like making my story in a way where I had the voice of a middle grader. And obviously it's been a while since I have been a middle schooler, so it was good to get professional editors' opinions on this, especially because they know what they're talking about. They have experience with writing books, and I was just able to get a lot of insight on like how I should make this story good for middle graders. And I think that the way that it turned out is fine for a first book, but I think that there's like still a long ways for me to go. And I think that the next book that I write will definitely have those like improvements, and it will be more, I guess, like finished in a way, and I'll be sure to pay extra attention to all the details and like how I write. So that is pretty much it for the editing portion. I'm going to now talk about like the actual publishing process. Okay, so the next thing I just really want to briefly talk about before I talk about like the actual publishing process is just like how my book was made. So obviously my manuscript was reviewed by 2 editors from Readsy, which by the way, if you are looking for an editor for your book, I highly recommend Readsy because they have some fantastic people on there. And just from the 2 editors that I had, they were really great, really thorough, so I highly recommend looking into Readsy if you are looking to publish a book. But this is the cover of my book. Basically, I did all of this through Canva. You have to have like the pro Canva account or whatever, the Canva version where you have to pay for it. I had that, and I basically just like created what I wanted my book to look like. They have like a lot of different options that you can do. I like added in text, and then I just looked up like a street sign to add the text onto. I just found like some houses. All these houses on my book are important in the book, so if you end up reading it, there is some importance to that. And then through Amazon has a self-publishing portion. You basically just go in, you add in your cover art. They give you the option to have one of their own ISBN codes, but I did not use one of theirs. I wanted to buy my own so that I could put it in bookstores, which I have already gotten it into one bookstore, and I am working on getting it into another bookstore. So basically there is this website, let me just look it up really quickly. It's called Bowker, I believe that's what how it's pronounced, Bowker or Bowker Identifier Services. I mean, you know, it's literally just like one of those things. I bought my own ISBN number and I managed to paste it on the back of my book, and then that was like pretty much that. It's like a pretty like simple process. I think the only thing that was like really hard was trying to make sure that everything fits on the Amazon cover layout that they have. That was like the main like thing that was kind of difficult. And then also like making sure I sized the actual pages of the book correctly. That was kind of hard, but other than that, it was like a pretty simple process. I mean, it's nothing too like difficult. It's just a lot of trying to make sure you get everything laid out correctly, and of course you have to make sure you have your page numbers, which you can just like add in through whatever you're using for your manuscript. Other than that, that's pretty much it. It took 4 years to write this book, and I am starting to figure out what my next book is, but I don't know entirely like the whole story. I'm just sort of in planning mode right now. That's pretty much it. It was like a really interesting process. It was a long process, that's for sure, especially with all like the editing and editors. It was quite a bit of money that I did have to spend on editing, on like editors and getting an ISBN number, but it's honestly just like a really cool process. It's cool seeing like something that you create and then like having it sort of be realized. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it if I'm remembering correctly. If you guys are interested in buying my book, I will put it in the description below. I mean, I just want you to keep in mind that it is a middle grade book. So if you have anyone that you know who's like a middle schooler who would enjoy a time travel book, I highly recommend it. But I mean, other than that, I think that's it. I'm gonna see if I can start like posting on YouTube more, but I don't know, because like I have a lot going on. I think that's it, and I will see you guys later. Bruh, thumbnail moment.